Hi friends, welcome back to my channel. My name is Lauren, you may also call me Lo, and today I'm starting a NetGalley reading vlog of Stay Awake by Megan Goldin. So this is my very first single book reading vlog, so we'll see how it goes. But I requested Stay Awake by Megan Goldin several months ago and was approved relatively quickly, but the book comes out in August, so I want to get it read in July so that I can let you know what I think of it. It's probably my most anticipated thriller of the year. Last year I read The Night Swim by Megan Goldin, and that quickly became one of my favorite thrillers that I've ever read. So naturally, when I saw that this was available on NetGalley, I jumped on that so quickly, and I'm so excited to read it and tell you all what I think about it. I haven't really read a summary for it, to be honest, and I kind of want to keep it that way. I like to go into all books pretty blind, but thrillers especially I like to go into super blind. But once I've read enough of it that I can properly summarize it for you, I will do that. So I will see you in a little bit. Through Stay Awake by Megan Goldin. I literally just have my iPad to show, which is nothing. And I don't know how many pages 25% is, because the page numbers on NetGalley are just wrong. So it says on my app that there are 600 something pages in this book, and that's not accurate. I know that that's not accurate. So the page number doesn't correlate. But I'm a quarter of the way through, and I have some initial thoughts. So I think that the premise of this book is quite compelling. We basically have this character named Liv, and we're following her in two timelines. We have the present timeline where Liv is just waking up in various places around New York City. And when she wakes up, she is pretty confused. She has no idea how she got to where she is. And she always wakes up and has cash, but no credit cards, no ID, no phone. And every time she wakes up, she doesn't remember the previous times this has happened to her. So that is going on, very mysterious. And then we're also following Liv in the past, which is about 2 years prior to the present timeline. So we're going to start learning from the past timeline, I'm assuming when this started happening and why it's happening. In addition to that, in the very first scene of this book, Liv wakes up and she has written all over her hands stay awake. She also finds a bloody knife in her pocket. Not great. So she discards the knife, and then we're kind of thrown into the rest of this story. So in addition to Liv's perspective, we're also following Detective Darcy Holliday, who works for the police department. She's a detective, obviously, and she is trying to solve this murder case where a man was stabbed. Are you making connections? Are you making connections? So it's pretty clear from the get-go, or at least it's made clear to the reader, that Liv has murdered this man, but doesn't remember it. And I don't know, that's what's happening. That's what's happening. So I think that the plot, or at least what's happening so far, is very interesting. I do have a couple of small nitpicky issues. The first I can't blame on the book, and you should not necessarily think that the book is going to be this way, but there have been a couple of instances where something is said and then a couple of pages later something else is said that contradicts that first thing, and I think it's just a editing issue. And if you don't know, NetGalley books are often not the actual final kind of copy of the book, so I assume that those like discrepancies are going to be fixed before the book is released to the public. I don't know if I said this in my initial clip, but let me tell you when the book actually does come out, because that's helpful. It says it comes out on August 8th, 2022 on my NetGalley app, but I vaguely remember reading on Goodreads that it was more like August 15th, but regardless, I think it'll be out in August, and hopefully that issue is going to be fixed. Another issue that I have with it that I'm not sure is going to be fixed is that every time Liv wakes up, she obviously doesn't remember the previous times that she's woken up. So she has a lot of the same kind of thoughts. So she will say repeatedly the last thing that she remembers is being in her office and getting a phone call. And that it was summer at the time. So because we've had a few instances up to this point of Liv waking up and not remembering, it renders the book slightly repetitive. But I guess that's part of the plot. I don't know. It is slightly repetitive. I kind of wish that these episodes of Liv waking up would end and we just kind of like continue to move forward. But so far that has not happened. But I will say that I'm very interested in the book. I'm very interested in continuing the book. Something else that's kind of funny is that the chapters where we're following Darcy Holiday, the detective, the chapter is always introduced with Detective Darcy Holiday was doing this, or Detective Darcy Holiday thought this, and it's always Detective Darcy Holiday, and I'm kind of like, all right, we know that she's a detective. This is getting annoying. But that's also a small nitpicky thing. Overall, I'm very intrigued by the story. I want to continue reading it. Of course, I'm gonna be honest and tell you what I really think of it. So those are my little like tiny issues with it, but I am very interested in continuing. It's definitely very gripping, and it was hard for me to stop at the 25% mark so I could update this book, so I could update this vlog. At this point, comparing it to the Night Swim, I think the Night Swim is better. I just think that the premise of the Night Swim was a little bit more straightforward and it was a little bit less repetitive, and I obviously can't remember my exact thoughts at the 25% mark of that book, but I remember from the beginning really enjoying it and really like thinking it was going to be a great book. This book, it could be a great book, but right now, I don't know yet. So that's it for now. I'm going to keep reading and I will update you shortly with my next thoughts as they come up. Friends, I'm about 75, I want to say, percent through the book. I'm between 70 and 80% for sure. And I have some additional thoughts. One kind of funny thing that I don't think I'm going to take into account, I'm definitely not going to take into account in my final rating of this book, is another like sort of arc quirk, but I just think it's really funny, so I want to talk about it. The word dumpster, when it appears in this book, is consistently capitalized, which I think is pretty hilarious. So I don't know why. It's some kind of weird editing thing. I'm sure it won't be like that in the final book, but I've been telling myself throughout this book that if the plot twist has anything to do with a dumpster, that I'm just gonna lose my mind. And if you're like, well, how many times does the word dumpster appear in this book? Like, a lot. It takes place in New York City, and the word dumpster appears more than you would think. But in terms of the actual content of this book, it is compelling. Like, I'm interested in the mystery. I'm interested in finding out what happens. I definitely am going to finish it, obviously. But I wouldn't say this is like a top tier thriller by any means. I think that, kind of like I said at the beginning, the fact that we have Liv waking up and remembering kind of the same events leading up to her memory loss every time makes it quite repetitive. We also have like a detective story in here, which I also talked about before. And the detective story isn't my favorite. I think the characters in this book are quite one-dimensional. Even Liv, who we get kind of a lot of in the past and the present, I just like don't really feel like I relate to her. I don't really love reading from her perspective. And the detectives are similar. I don't really love them. I don't really feel connected to them in any particular way, but the plot of this book is interesting. Another thing that's kind of bugging me about it is that one of the characters in this book is being stalked, and the character is receiving anonymous Snapchats from their stalker, which doesn't make sense. I don't have like that much experience with Snapchat, but I know for a fact that you like have to be friends with someone in order to receive a Snapchat from them, and you can't anonymously send a Snapchat, so maybe I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure that's not how it works, so that's kind of like taken me out of the story a little bit. I don't know why Snapchat is the chosen vehicle for this, but it is. As far as comparing it to the Night Swim, I definitely say hands down that the Night Swim is a lot better, which is a bummer. But I haven't gotten to the plot twist yet. Things might change. I'm really excited to actually see how Megan Goldin handles the ending of this book. I think that that'll make a big difference in how I feel about it in the end. But right now, I'm leaning toward probably a 3-star rating. Yeah. It's kind of a bummer, but it is what it is. Even if I give this book a 3-star rating, I will probably continue to read Megan Goldin's books because I really, really loved The Night Swim. But this, I have to say, isn't quite hitting the mark. Certainly isn't hitting the same mark as The Night Swim did, but we'll see. I will keep you updated. I hope to finish it tonight. So I'll either update you tonight or tomorrow with my like final thoughts on the book. But I have to say I'm slightly disappointed by this one so far. All right, friends, I finally finished Stay Awake, so I'm just going to give kind of my last thoughts before I conclude this vlog. I think Stay Awake is like an average to below average thriller, which is very sad because I absolutely loved The Night Swim and I expected this to be really good. But I think because of the nature of Liv's memory problems, the story was far too repetitive. I also had a really difficult time caring about the characters in this book. Liv was this like frantic, confused person who would keep waking up and saying that she wanted answers, and then the second she was about to meet with someone who would give her answers, she'd like escape out a back door or escape out of a fire escape and would never get any information. And I felt like the story really, really relied on Liv never gaining any insight. And that same scenario happened time and time again, and it was very frustrating to read. I thought that the ending might kind of make this book a little bit better, but I found the ending also pretty disappointing. A lot of the things that happen to Liv, mainly the fact that she's getting stalked throughout this book, is never addressed. And it doesn't actually make any sense to me that the actual perpetrator of this crime would have been doing that. So that's, I mean, maybe I just like didn't get it, but I don't think that that's ever explained. And I was like really banking on that being explained. I was just really waiting for that moment to like find out what was going on with that, and it never came. At the end of the book, Liv basically like miraculously gains her memory back. And it was just a frustrating book. For most of this book, I thought I was gonna give it a 3-star rating, but I don't think I can. I definitely never considered like DNFing this book. It wasn't like that bad, but I definitely wouldn't say that I overall enjoyed it. So I think I'm going to settle on a 2.5 for this book. I know that's really disappointing. Trust me, I'm so shocked. This was my most anticipated thriller of the year and probably my most anticipated book of the year, like release of the year. So yeah, pretty bummed about that. So if you're a fan of The Night Swim, here's what I would tell you. I wouldn't deter you from reading this book, but I definitely would lower your expectations considerably. I am pretty surprised that the same person who wrote The Night Swim wrote this book. Maybe that's harsh, but the writing is completely different and on just completely different tiers, if you ask me. So that's a bummer, but if you really liked Megan Goldin's other book, I wouldn't not read this. I just would go in with pretty low expectations. So this is kind of a bummer note to end this vlog on, but it is what it is. You win some, you lose some. I hope that this was helpful. If you've read this book, please let me know what you thought about it. And if you want to read this book, you still should, if you want to. I'm not gonna tell you not to do it. So that is it for this vlog. If you are new to my channel, please consider liking this video and subscribing. I put one bookish video out every week, sometimes two, if I can pull it off. If you're still here, thank you so much for being here. I always really appreciate it, and I will see you next time.